Hi fifth graders, my name is Amanda Height and I'm a teaching artist here at Plains Art Museum. Today we're going to go through our first floor gallery, which is an install of our permanent collection. Downstairs, if you remember from previous years, right underneath our feet is our permanent collection. There are several thousands of pieces, so each year we have a team of curators that get together and decide on different pieces that will be in the first floor. This year, we have a whole bunch of different prints that are involved with this exhibition. Today, we'll be talking about 3 of them. To See What I Could See, an examination of contemporary printmaking, is an exhibition that helps the viewer, us, the 5th graders, relate to different forms of printmaking. Printmaking is just like what we would say is a family tree or a tree of knowledge. Underneath the main tree, there's all of these different little branches, and this exhibition allows for us to see all of the huge possibilities that come into play with printmaking. Throughout the gallery, we start to notice that there's different categories, and so we learn about formalism, so talking about color and shape. We learn about collaboration, so working together and working with other artists. We learn about narrative, so telling a story, and most importantly, process, which is what printmaking is. It's all about the various processes.
Hello, fifth graders. My name is Anne. I'm one of the teaching artists here at Plains Art Museum. I work with Amanda. We're in the first floor gallery and we're going to take a look at this piece of art. It's one of 3 pieces of art we would like to spend a little bit of time with. This piece of art is by an artist, a North Dakota native, named James Rosenquist. James Rosenquist was born in 1933. He grew up in the area around Grand Forks as a young man. His mom was involved in aviation, as was his father. James Rosenquist, as a young man, also spent time painting silos and billboards, so that's how he got his start in art. And what's most interesting about James Rosenquist is his work with painting on silos and billboards, large-scale pieces, got the attention of the art world. And he was really interested in painting everyday objects. So things like eyeglasses, which are featured in this piece here. He would take everyday objects and make them in a much larger scale and kind of play with that a little bit. James Rosenquist is considered an important member of the pop art, or popular art, as we call it, line of thinking or line of creating. And that's artists who like everyday objects. If you think about things that are used commonly in our culture, right now during COVID, a mask might be the subject of something an artist would really focus in on. So in this piece, we'll take a closer look at it. It's called My Mind is an Empty Glass. So I'd like to invite you to take just a couple moments and let your eyes take a look at the piece, and let's see what we can see. Now, one of the things I noticed right away is James is using images of everyday eyeglasses, kind of like the ones I'm wearing here. Take a look at the scale. So scale has to do with size. So my eyeglasses are pretty big, and if you take a look at what the artist has done, he's made them much larger. A face that would wear that size eyeglasses would be really, really big. So he's playing with that scale. Now, I counted 5. Maybe you see more, maybe you see less. Either is okay. One of the things we can also take a look at with this piece is how the artist is using color. So let's see what colors we can find in this piece of art. I noticed right away the red and the blue is down in this lens here. That kind of reminds me of something maybe patriotic, like the American flag. You might see some other colors, some oranges and yellows, some pinks and oranges. So we can think about in our mind what colors the artist chose and why. He could have chosen any color at all, and yet those are the colors he chose to work with. Sometimes it's fun to think about what an artist is trying to tell us about a piece. I wanted to make sure to mention that when you were here at Plains Art Museum on a past visit, you might have noticed the very big North Dakota mural that's in our atrium. That is another piece of art also by James Rosenquist. And it's an important piece of art because it's showcasing the story of North Dakota. And again, he's taking everyday objects that you might remember, things like a teepee, a bird, lots of different objects. The night sky is featured in that piece, and he takes it and he makes it really big and really grand. And so that's a neat thing to think about. I'm going to invite my colleague, Amanda, who you already met, another teaching artist here at the museum, to come and talk with you a little bit about something called collaboration. We teaching artists work together to share information with students, and we also are able to talk about collaboration when one artist works with another artist.
Hi, fifth graders. Amanda here again. So as Anne told you, we're going to talk about collaboration. The beautiful thing about printmaking is that it's a collaborative art form. And so, a beautiful example of that in this gallery is the James Rosenquist piece that we have here. Although he was known at being a painter, he has made hundreds of prints that show in exhibitions throughout the whole world. So what that means is that a master printer works with the artist, in this case it's James Rosenquist, and they work together to create a piece that the artist will claim as their own. The beautiful thing about that is that other artists inspire other artists, and from there, collaboration can happen. So next, we're going to talk about David Bradley and talk about how he was inspired by different artists as well.
Hello, fifth graders. It's Miss Ann. We're going to talk about this piece of art by an artist named David Bradley. David Bradley was born in the early 1950s. He was born in Eureka, California, but he actually grew up in Minnesota. He split his time between the Northwoods of Minnesota and Minneapolis. As a young boy, actually when he was in elementary school, he was quite the artist, and in fact, he was often asked to do art and became something of a leader in his classroom and in his community. David Bradley is a Native American artist. When he was a young man, his family was split up, and he ended up in the foster care system for a time. That was a difficult point in his life, and he felt very disconnected from his family, and he was later reunited with his family, and that was really important to him to connect to his culture. After high school, David Bradley joined the Peace Corps, and so then he spent time in Guatemala with the Mayan people, and that was a really important point in his life. It changed who he was and kind of shaped his direction. When he returned to the United States after serving in the Peace Corps, he enrolled in a very prestigious art program in Santa Fe, New Mexico. And that eventually led to solo art shows and other work that got him attention in the art world, and people began to collect his artwork. He continues to work and create art to this day. He often uses symbols in his artwork, and so we're going to take a closer look at this piece, the Rio Grande Madonna from 1987. And what I'd invite you to do is let your eyes go over the piece and look for any objects or items that might represent something else. We call it symbolism, and it's something that David Bradley uses often. It's also something a lot of artists use. So, a couple of things to note, and then I'm going to invite Miss Amanda to come in and talk to you more about a few other items in this piece. A couple of things that caught my eye. There's a small bird here, and the bird appears to be almost singing or talking to the girl. Other items that I caught attention of, there's a ring, a very small ring here, but it has a heart shape on it. Heart can often represent love. And then this necklace that she's wearing, it kind of reminded me originally of like a horseshoe or something. Some cultures believe that a horseshoe upright preserves good luck. Others have other beliefs tied to that. So with that, I'd like to invite Miss Amanda to come and talk to you a little bit more about some of the symbols that David Bradley is using in this piece.
Hi, fifth graders. Amanda here again. So as Anne said, we're going to talk a little bit about the David Bradley piece and the symbols that are in it. Something to remember is when we talked about the James Rosenquist piece, artists inspire other artists. And so this piece got inspiration from the Mona Lisa. You can see that from how she is sitting, and also we know that in the title. So from there, let's talk a little bit about the symbolism that's in this piece. If you look at the piece from left to right, top to bottom, we can start to let our eye wander and look all around at what these little spots that catch our eye are saying. So first off, we can talk a little bit about the background and the landscape. And so here we see mountains. It's much different than our North Dakota landscape that we're used to. As your eye wanders down, you start to see architecture here. So these are Pueblo Village, that's right behind here. We also start to notice the Rio Grande River, that's right here as well, that tells us in the title where she is. And her herself. So the different symbols that we see throughout is the different jewelry that she's wearing. So the other piece that we see here is the tablita. The turquoise green that we have here, along with the feathers that are coming out, is a headdress that is used during a Pueblo ceremony. Normally, it is done by a female that's within the community, and it can last anywhere from 1 day up to multiple days. And the whole purpose behind it is to bring rain. So that kind of explains to us the colors that we see in the tablita here that replicate the colors that we see in the sky. Something else to note about the ceremony is that she'll constantly wear a dark piece of clothing. So we see that she has a black shawl on. Singing happens throughout the whole ceremony, so that could maybe indicate why we see the songbird here. And then also again, she wears different jewelry. So we see a piece of turquoise here, which is known to the south. Something that's really important to note about David Bradley is that he really loves to make art that's based around telling his story, but also the story of the culture that he came from. With that being said, we're going to talk about one more piece in this gallery by Melanie Yazzie. So today we're going to talk about this piece right up here that's by the artist Melanie Yazzie. Melanie Yazzie was born in 1966 and is part of the Navajo Nation that's in Arizona. Today what we're going to kind of look at is try to understand the story and the symbols that are happening within this piece. So I'm going to have Anne tell you a little bit more about it.
Hi, fifth graders, it's Anne again. So yes, this piece by Melanie Yazzie is what we're going to focus on. And there's a lot going on in this piece, and there's lots of details that are happening. But first, let's just take an overall look at it. Again, going from left to right, from top to bottom, letting your eyes take in the entire scene. And let's see what we notice first. Just take a moment, take a look, and see what kind of comes out at you first. Could be wrong, but I'm going to guess for many of you, it's the figure in the picture of the two women. It's actually a photograph of Melanie Yazzie, the artist, and her grandmother. So that's pretty cool. So it's Melanie and her grandmother together, looking at each other, they're smiling, and they're kind of positioned a little bit off-center, right? So they're a little bit more to this side. Now the title of the piece is Thelma and Me, and it was created in 2001. So I told you the artist is here. This is Melanie, and so then her grandmother, I believe, would be named Thelma. So what she used, though, to incorporate this is she used a piece of newspaper from a Navajo newspaper. And it's interesting to me that she chose a very specific page in a newspaper. Newspapers have many pages, but she chose this page. And if you look at some of the text that's on here, she's got an article that's up here about Miss Rodeo, which would be kind of more of a Western tradition. But then right next to it, there's an advertisement or a promotion for a powwow, which would be a native tradition. So she's kind of playing with two different storylines, is what I'm feeling. There's information here about a charter school budget, but yet over here, there's information about a native indigenous educational offering. And then there's this ad that's featured here from one of the banks, and that's talking about 2 for the price of none. And yet here are 2 female figures. One of the interesting things that the artist chose to do is she trimmed this newspaper page. And you might say, well, Miss Ann, how do you know she trimmed that page? And the truth is that in every newspaper printed, they almost always have page numbers, dates, and some other key information. It might have like headers or other little bits of information that you'll find. And she chose to exclude that by trimming the page down. And then, to make things even more interesting, if you take a look, both here and alongside on the other side, she has kind of like 2 strips or 2 bookends. And that is a series of what appears to be a series of different symbols. So again, using different symbols to help tell a story. And when I took a closer look at this, I definitely noticed a turtle. There's a turtle here, and then the turtle repeats over there in a different position. So each of these are almost reminiscent or remind me of pictures that might have been drawn on a cliff wall or inside a cave wall by early humans. So pictographs is what those are called. So she's using all of these different things to start to tell a story about her culture, about her family, and then it's presented here. And when you use multiple things to come together, we often will talk about that as something called mixed media or collage. So bringing many things together and overlaying those to build a fuller story, a more true story. So we're so glad that you got to visit the museum today and to spend a little bit of time in our galleries. We hope that in the future you will come visit us. We are open and there is no admission cost to visit the museum. So keep that in mind if you're looking for something to do with your family. And we are very glad that you're going to have the opportunity to build your projects as well. So thanks so much.